This video is about transformations and graphing equations that have been transformed. So the first thing we need to know is our parent functions, and then we're going to transform those. So the very first one I want to talk about is vertical translation. And what that does is that it's going to move our graph either up or down. So one way we'll see it is either an f of x, for example, plus 2. So what it's doing is I want to remind you that that f of x is the same thing as a y. So it's getting all the y values and adding 2 to all those y values. So for right here, our origin, the y value is 0, and if I add 2, it brings that point to here. When we come over here, and I'm going to just picking one, here's 2, 2, and if I go up 2 from that point, and what I'm doing is I'm just moving that y value up 2. And what we're going to find is that we're going to have the exact same graph except moved up 2 units upward. We could do the same thing if we had f of x and we had a minus 2. Again, remind yourself that that's getting the y values and we're subtracting 2. So to do that, I'm going to get my y value and I'm going to go down 2. I'm going to get this y value up here and go down 2. And this y value and go down 2. And we should be able to see our graph has been shifted down 2 units. And what changes is the range. So the range is what changes. The domain stays the same. The x values did not change, but the y values did change. If we go to a horizontal translation, it's going to move our graph left and right. So we're going to see stuff that looks like f and then in parentheses x plus 2. And on the other one we're going to do f of x minus 2, and that's inside the parentheses. So let's just do a quick note of what that means. So what we're doing for that first one where we have f of x plus 2, we're going to think about getting that origin, and we're going to have x plus 2, and we're going to set that equal to 0. And I'm solving for x, and I find that that's equal to a negative 2. So what it says is that we're going to get our graph, we're going to get the x value of 0 and move it 2 units to the left, so it becomes here. And I can do the same thing with any of these points. So this point right here is the x value is 2, and I'm going to move it 2 units to the left. I'm going to get this one right here and move this 2 units to the left. And we're going to see that our parabola is going to be here. Likewise, when I take a look at my function that has fx minus 2, again, this tells me how to move my x's. I'm going to set that equal to 0 because that's where we're starting our vertex. And then I'm going to solve for x, and says x is equal to 2. So what that means is I'm going to get my x point, which is 0, 0, and I'm going to move it 2 units to the right. I'm going to get this point right here, which is at 2, 4, and move the x units 2 units to the right. And I'm going to get this one that's negative 2, 4, and move the x value 2 units to the right. And we'll see our parabola is here. So we're going to find that what changes for these equations is the domain. The domain will change.